Great. Thanks, Tim, and thanks for everyone joining. I'd like to talk about, kind of a new area in terms of digital transformation that's getting a lot of focus. Um, there's some common elements to your typical smart factory, smart supply chain type of a digital transformation. Um, and it's really, the move towards a more holistic, connected workplace really started, I think, maybe last year before COVID. But the challenge with the pandemic and the shutdowns and the restarts and the disruption to, um, kind of normal business has really heightened the focus on employees, on safety, on the changing workplace, on better tools. And so wanted to um, really kind of take this opportunity to kind of walk through, um, what we're looking at from a connected workplace, um, and highlight some of the ways that companies are leveraging digital transformation to first and foremost provide a safe work environment for employees, but really make the workplace much more productive, much more connected, and that interplay between people and place and machinery and driving innovation and really driving bottom line results. Um, and so for folks that have known me for many years, I've been at a company called LHP Engineering. And, we kind of got into, kind of the connected workplace really forever. But with the pandemic, we launched our connected workplace health solution, and can do the contact tracing and those sorts of things. And what quickly started happening were companies were asking us, okay, we like the tracing, but can you add material tracking? Can you add productivity? Can you add asset tracking? And so they're asking us to basically build out a more holistic platform on top of their investments in cloud technology like Azure, their IoT platform with ThingWorks. They're wanting ready-made solutions that plugged in, help them get the value quickly, but solve real problems that they were struggling with. And so that's what we call Daxios, is that larger view. And one of the fundamental messages that we're trying to convey, but also leverage, is there's so much information in your workplace already. The workplace is already connected. And whether it's, your HVAC systems, your building management systems, there's so much data that can be not only tapped into, but when you look at it from the lens of people in the place with the machine, you really start seeing where there's opportunities to reduce cost, streamline operations, better align usage, which is where you capture true value from digital. A lot of these concepts are very similar to the lean manufacturing concepts that we've all grown up with. I know Tim and the group here, a lot of the weekly sessions are really often how to leverage lean with digital and digital with lean. And so it's that type of an approach, but looking at the holistic workplace. And it, again, kind of what drove this imperative was kind of, if you think back to the February, March, April timeframe, when the crisis really came to bear. And it didn't matter where you're at in the world or which part of the organization, we kind of drew this crisis curve to kind of show sort of what's happening, what is about to happen, and the realities of a crisis. Kind of drawn from a lot of experience, definitely from the Boeing days, life in the 9/11 aerospace market definitely helped. But one of the challenges that we were seeing right off the bat was, the crisis hit. For a while there, folks were thinking, oh, we're okay, our market's good, our backlog's good. And then reality sets in. You start shutting the factories, right? People are getting sick. Supply chains start getting disrupted. It goes from a regional to a global issue. And next thing you know, feels like the bottom's dropping out. And you saw different industries react differently. But again, there's everyone starts cutting the discretionary costs. Next thing you know, you're having to cut direct costs. And then we're survival mode. So you're living off of your working capital, you launch into the inventory war rooms, you start consolidating. But at some point, as you're living through all this sustained austerity, there's a new market paradigm that emerges. In the automotive industry, you're starting to see a huge push towards EV, right? And all of a sudden, automakers are having to, if they weren't already moving that way, move faster. And so once that sort of new paradigm is understood, then there's a very competitive race between getting the right products out and developed and capturing the market when consumers are ready to spend. And it's at that initial recovery where all the profit seems to come from, right? First mover advantage, you've got your economies of scale. And so what we're trying to do with our connected workplace platform is give folks the tools they need to live through any kind of a disruption. But even more importantly, is not have to live sort of this downward cycle, but innovate and transform faster. So you don't need to be in a crisis to leverage good asset management tools or connected resource tools. And so that's one of the things that folks companies across the globe are really seeing is, the value of people, whether they're working remotely or in the office or in the factory or some combination, how they relate to their workplace. Is it productive? Is it efficient? Is it healthy? Is it safe? And then do they have the tools and the ability to innovate and transform? Are they efficient? Are they productive? Are they enabled? Okay. And so that's kind of the challenge in the post-pandemic. If you look at a lot of the factories where in order to accomplish appropriate social distancing, they've had to put up barriers throughout the facility. They've had to space out operations, much more focus on cleaning and decontamination. It's tough to get a lot of energy or a lot of investments towards big, long, drawn-out digital transformation initiatives. And so kind of the realities of that environment is the need to accelerate, the need to get to value quickly. And the way to do that is first and foremost, tap into what you already have, the data, the systems, the sensors, and then get that into a value-driving solution quickly that you can then scale and scale and scale. Okay. And so again, we kind of, there's different ways to slice this, different ways to organize it, but we really, again, our customers are telling us, safety, health, table stakes. It is now part of the equation. Every smart factory, every smart office building, every connected engineering, everything kind of comes through the lens of the pandemic. And so solutions around health and safety and employee, well-being are really a starting point for these discussions. But then at the end, connected assets, connected resource, it's how companies can very quickly leverage digital transformation to compete, get a competitive advantage, leverage this pandemic as a way of sort of re-energizing and getting focused, but to come out of the pandemic faster, stronger, and in a better market position. So when we think about them, and people ask me a lot, what's the difference between health and resource and asset, and oftentimes they're all interrelated. But one thing that the pandemic has taught us is, I think before the pandemic, there was this desire for digital transformation, smart factories. It's very aspirational, very big picture. And the pandemic has kind of made us focus on individual health and safety, the employees. Just like back in the shop, right? Safety is job one. And leveraging good digital tools are a great way to enhance safety solutions, bring in new capabilities, but also integrate your safety into your smart factory, into your connected engineering, which then leads to the connected resource. And there we're focused on efficiency and productivity. Whether you're trying to regain the productivity you lost because of rearranging the furniture, or you just don't have the time to waste on non-value added activities. And again, one of the great things about digital transformation, these IoT tools, is the ability to automate and leverage data to streamline activities that have kind of been manual forever. Good example is like the daily status report, right? Into shift, supervisor, your lead walks around, gathers, status, right? Writes it up, emails it out to everyone. Second shift does the same thing, very manual. You end up wasting an hour or two every day in every factory, every area, just writing up status reports. Those can be totally automated, not just the charts and the graphs, but the language, the data, the text, that is not just a static Word document, but is a searchable, traceable data asset that is really just using the outputs of your factory to do the documentation. And then there's the connected asset, and this is one where a lot of focus has been, which rightly should be, around machine utilization and predictive maintenance and remote monitoring. The difference here that we're trying to really emphasize is that linkage between the people, the productivity, how that is related to the use of the machinery. Where is the value in that proposition? And by aligning and automating the response of machine to people, to usage, to the business, there's tremendous value that can be captured. Okay. So let me kind of dive into each one a little bit, give you some examples of what I'm talking about, and then go through a couple of use cases that really highlight what we're talking about. So in kind of the health analytics space, some of these are relatively common now or well known, but you're also starting to see other elements go into the health aspects. So the contact tracing, social distancing, again, kind of whether you do it manually or semi-manually or whatever, so many ways to automate that, leveraging not only existing information, but adding in smart badges and beacons, and monitor that at a much broader scale. You're seeing companies big and small introduce thermal cameras into their facilities. And so integrating those into your IoT platform to help monitor potential hotspots. Density management. Most areas of the factory, you almost violate the social distancing just because you're in a factory. There are just jobs where, and so rather than worry about the social distancing, it's more about managing distancing or density. This work area should have 8 people, and so no more than 8. And then the remote worker safety. One thing we've seen quite a bit, traditionally, in a region or on a large site, you may have one centralized maintenance team that maintains equipment across the site. Challenge with the pandemic is workers can't just go anywhere they want. And so oftentimes you have more employees that are working remotely on a job than ever before. And so there's opportunities for better monitoring, better tools, better techniques that can help not only ensure safety, but improve productivity. And then throwing in another one that's definitely getting a lot of focus in the post-pandemic is around your HVAC monitoring, your air quality. And this is a good example of, the connection between health and productivity and asset monitoring, is that from a health analytics standpoint, monitoring air quality is really key to ensuring that the potential spread of COVID is being mitigated, right? It's pretty much table stakes now, monitoring the air quality, making sure you've got a right amount of fresh air coming in and you're managing airflow through the facility is key to providing a safe work environment. But it's also a way of, attracting and bringing people back to work, say in your office areas, so that they can be more productive as a team, getting back to working together. But then it also ties right back to your predictive maintenance, your fault protection. You're working up on the roof for your HVAC, dealing with the filter and the filtration systems that are on the HVAC systems, all those issues. And then finally, the productivity of your maintenance team. One thing the pandemic has caused is a lot of extra work for your facilities folks, running around, decontaminating, doing daily wipe downs or multiple times a day, more work for the same amount of people. And so using good predictive maintenance, alerting, remote monitoring tools allows your maintenance team and facilities team to monitor the health of your assets, which are in turn providing a healthy environment for your employees. So diving a little bit deeper, one of the things we've focused on is helping companies, again, leverage the data they have, but also how do they go from step one, we don't know what we're doing or where to start, to a much more integrated solution. So kind of using the contact tracing example is, a lot of folks think that the first thing they need to do is buy really expensive badges or invest in some huge new infrastructure, when typically there's enough existing data sources to do a reasonable job of automated contact tracing. So leveraging your passive RFID badge transactions as you enter the building or move through the building, your cell phone connections to the Wi-Fi, not the actual cell phone data, but just the registrations, your work shift locations, your cafeteria, transactions. There's so much data in the facility existing to quite easily and pretty reliably identify, potential contact tracing issues if we need them. Also monitor, movement through the factory, density. And then when you need to get more definition, more precision on your tracing, start deploying the smart badges and the zoning beacons. And not only do you get more precision on the contact tracing and distancing, those smart badges also have accelerometers. So they can be used for man-down scenarios, be used for remote monitoring of employees, say in the confined workspace. The zoning beacons that are out there also work with material tracking. And so again, you're not just, be able to trace employee and for contact tracing, but manage inventory and manage inventory movements. And then ultimately start integrating some of the other bigger issues, the thermal cameras and those things into it. And so we've taken that approach across, multiple. Here's another one around remote worker safety, where it's not just about, monitoring of the employee, are they moving, are they not? That's definitely key and really table stakes, but also leveraging other digital tools to help that remote worker be safe, be productive, solve problems. So great use cases for augmented reality, for digital work instructions, along with your smart badging and those types of tools. And so, oftentimes a lot of us have used AR, maybe in the shop for training or setup, or maybe out on the line for service. You've used maybe digital work instructions for training aids. But if you take those in combination and you put them through the lens of how do I ensure my remote worker is safe up on the roof, down in the tunnel, out on the flight line, suddenly the tools you've already started investing in have so many more use cases. And so the return on that investment is better. The focus on safety is stronger. You definitely have a willing audience in your health and safety and shop employees. Yeah. So again, really trying to help leverage these digital tools through the lens of health, productivity, and asset utilization. And again, the HVAC monitoring we just talked about, right? The other great thing I like about HVAC, particularly for companies that are either just getting going in digital transformation, or they're trying to find a use case that can really scale across multiple sites and across the company. Monitoring your HVAC systems is a great place. One, the data's fairly easy to manage. The HVAC systems, whether they're old ones or new, They're getting easier to connect to and far easier to get the data from. And then once you've figured out that connectivity, the ability to roll that out to building to building to building, site to site, gets so much faster. And so now you've got a use case that, again, ties to safety, ties to maintenance, ties to comfort in the shop, ties to equipment maintenance and predictive maintenance that more teams across the company can leverage, which gives your digital transformation team really a big win early, and use those learnings, use that success to start getting into more and more complex machine environments. Okay, so keep that in mind. Another feature of kind of getting into the HVAC systems for companies that are running off a fairly mature or large-scale building management system is by tapping into the BMS. Now you're seeing a whole myriad of facilities and building level information that is often not being leveraged or leveraged at scale like it could be. Everything from security to alerts to utilities, power consumption. So much could be running through your building management systems that by attaching your IoT system and your analytics platform to can provide a ton of opportunity of aligning spend and usage to production. All right. So on the connected resource, and this is one where, lots of different ways to look at this, but what we try to do with our approach is look at those areas where truly time is wasted, productivity is lost. It's your lean manufacturing concepts. And how do we get more engineering out of engineers, more manufacturing out of manufacturing by eliminating or automating, typical manual processes. And so first of all, just how do you take all these dashboards and alerts and just build a control center that's centralized, that's coordinating, get everything onto a single pane of glass just to make it easier to manage and respond. That can drive tremendous savings, both in terms of overhead costs, but just in increased response times, feedback loops, escalating to the right level of the organization to address issues. And then we start getting into material track and trace. And this is one we talk a lot about, actually in parallel with the contact tracing of employees. Same technology, same methodology, same systems, oftentimes the exact same tags. And with the advancements of these smart tags, the ability to really drill into aging inventory, location tracking, queuing, so much more information about your inventory movement than ever before, which are ways to help streamline. Again, when we go back to that pandemic curve, a lot of companies right now are living off of their working capital, and with disrupted supply chain lines, how do we streamline and recover? You're trying to get your order to cash cycle as low as you can. So a lot of focus on inventory management, which traditionally requires a lot of arms and legs in the factory to enable. These track and trace solutions are a huge opportunity to, again, streamline, save money, reduce working capital, cash, but also help your production lines recover. Then we get into capacity management and scheduling. And if you think about it from a factory, that's pretty typical kind of ERP, MES type activities. But this is focusing on efficient capacity planning of people, of teams, of skill sets, particularly in the technical areas, engineering, product development, manufacturing across a large footprint. We've had a customer who had huge multi-million-dollar productivity savings, in the engineering ranks by really just, leveraging some of these capacity tools around the technical skills. Dynamic scheduling, which I think has been quite an issue with the pandemic and the challenge with people movement, is getting the right person with the right skill set, the right tools to the right machine at the same time, and having that scheduling be dynamic, matching the activities within the factory or within the production system. And so there's so many opportunities there to save time, drive efficiencies. And then finally, around the automated document management, we talked about that. The ability to turn that IoT data into ready-made Word documents, PowerPoints, shift reports, quality reports, machine reliability reports, without having to actually do any manual data entry. It's fabulous. We talked about the track and trace. And then finally around assets. And this is one that is getting, it's always a focus of digital transformation, which rightfully so. But, thinking about it from a recovery, from a cost, from an opportunity, one thing we've seen over many years of doing this is that sometimes these transformational initiatives feel like a job shop. Everything's done from scratch. It's still, companies are struggling to scale and scale fast. And so by leveraging, again, going after your common machines, really starting with some key entry points, allows companies to not only get the wins, but scale faster. And I think probably the best example of that is in the utility management space, which doesn't get a lot of attention some days. And I'll dive into the use case there a little bit further. But if you think about the ability to save money, real money, drive real value, it's pretty difficult to do it in the asset space. You can get more efficient, but is it truly going to be a quick path to lower cost or a quick path to more output? Now, it typically takes some time. Same thing with predictive maintenance. Building those predictive models takes the time, but it's also, are you committing to doing less maintenance, more output? Hard to quantify sometimes. But saving utilities is an instantaneous savings. Most companies already have a energy management initiative underway. Turning off computers, turning off lights. So you have a team in place, an initiative in place to help sponsor. But this is one where, back in the day, so I kind of grew up in Boeing's wing shop, where we launched our utility management more by accident than anything. But we ended up funding our entire smart factory initiative off the utility savings, and leverage those savings to avoid, labor reductions or other cost reductions that were caused by, production rate changes. And so many companies, if you take your balance sheet, if you take your business plan, and you look at those categories where you really have an opportunity to reduce immediately, to save, to drive value, you'll find that utilities is one of the largest cost elements, within a manufacturer or in a large facility of any type. It's often not as visible because utilities are often managed at the site or facility level versus the production line level. But by focusing on utility management and getting those savings, you can then start not only self-funding, but getting those big wins that a team needs to drive more excitement around digital transformation. It also plays into those other areas, and let me kind of spend a minute there. And it's kind of how we got into it probably about 25 years ago, is we were actually starting with our OEE solution. And we started noticing that our OEE system would lose track of machines once maintenance would lock out a machine to do maintenance. And once we understood that we could, in order to know the machine was up or down, connect to the substation, suddenly we could manage and measure actual utility consumption by machine, which up to that point was not available. And then we could tie that consumption to the actual usage of the machine to see, are we just leaving the power on 24/7, or are we truly managing utilities to the usage? And once we had that, we were making money. We were also able to use that utility on just remote monitoring. Is the power cut or is it not cut? And if you're one of those companies that have these lifeblood machines and you're 100 miles away and they cut power to your machine and you get to know about it, there's a problem in the shop. So it feeds your machine utilization. Predictive maintenance is another one. We talking with an engineering team managing the wind tunnels, heating and cooling spikes in power are all indicators of premature equipment failure. So again, the utility management one is an area where if you're looking for a place to start or looking for a use case to drive value immediately, looking for a use case that everyone can jump into, definitely a key one. So again, the typical asset space utilization, really encourage folks. There's so much data already out there. Leverage what you have first. Connect to what you can connect to. Don't worry about being perfect. Some facilities can see a 5, 10, 15% improvement in utilization just by being able to see your asset performance remotely. Not all the fancy, artificial intelligence and predictive maintenance. It's really, can you just see what's going on remotely? Can you escalate issues? Can you do a performance measurement? Can you drive improvements? We talked about the utilities. I'll jump into the bigger use case here in a second. Again, predictive maintenance, all those pretty traditional ones. Okay. And you'll get a copy of this presentation. Tim will send it out to everyone. So let me kind of jump a little further into the utilities. And this is, think about what we're trying to do with digital transformation, Industry 4.0 is not just, make a bunch of colored charts, but it's one, really change and streamline the performance of the factory, but also drive value for the company. And so this is an example where we're working with a customer. They were spending a good $200, $300 million a year on utilities. And it was just a given, that's how much it cost. And again, because the utilities are managed by the larger site facilities team at their budget level, gets rolled into a use and occupancy rate. The production team didn't see the actual cost, and vice versa. The maintenance team, the facilities team, right? Their job is to turn the power on, turn it off, and not much more. And so we implemented our utility system. And again, this was in a pretty tough environment. We were trying to help them save money. And so we developed our profile, you see on the right here, of this. It's hard to see the green line, yellow line, red line of here's how much they were committing to spend on utilities based on their production plan. And with that particular, if you've ever been in the aerospace business, you just don't get to promise, you get to commit, and that was their commitment line. And things were going pretty well for the first, few weeks, right? We're underrunning, right? We're saving, everyone's doing the right thing. And then we had a pretty tough, you see the red bars here, where the plant had committed to, taking the facilities down for the weekend, save a bunch of utility costs. Somebody forgot to tell the boss, so the shop came in and had to work a bunch of overtime. And we came back in on that Monday, looked at the utility consumption versus the projection, and saw that we had blown the commitment. And typically, this would go unnoticed, right? End of the month, end of the quarter, you'd see your financials, it'd get lost in the mix. But because we could see it immediately, the superintendent, you see there with a next drop in green, that was Monday. And so in order to get back on the financial commitment that was made to the VPGM, we turned off a lot of equipment. We had the folks in the shop work on 5S'ing and cleaning and we basically watched the meter until we had made up the difference between what was overspent the weekend before until we were back on schedule. And then once we were back online, factories up and off and running. And so it's that real-time feedback, a real-time ability for action, the real time to show your employees and your teams, hey, this is how we're paying for things, allows the company to leverage data and digital transformation and these kinds of tools to drive immediate performance and get immediate business value. And then you see over time, yeah, they had some blips and they had some, some misses. But once they started getting into that mode of, hey, we can save money, which can be reused, can offset other reductions. A lot of it was just working together and communicating. They were able to underrun their utility costs by 5+%, and ended up rolling out this solution across the entire company. And so great use case. And that's one of the things we're trying to teach with this series. One thing we're trying to do with Daxios, with the tools we're rolling out with our partners, is how do we help companies tap into these value driving opportunities, but how do you get scale, right? Not just one machine, one shop, one area, but how do you roll that out across your entire company, get your return on the investment. And so this hopefully is a good example. So with that, I think kind of covered, there's more materials here. I think we'll make the presentation available, but maybe open it up to questions, Tim?
Absolutely. So for anyone involved, if you want to ask a question, please put it into the Q&A. In the meantime, if I could get that started, Mike, I've got a couple questions for you.
Okay.
Let's see. if I make an investment for some of the smart badges that you talked about, or tags that you can put on the badges,
Yep.
is there a way that I can reuse those elsewhere once, hopefully someday a vaccine is widely available?
Yeah, great question. Get that one quite a bit. Is a couple areas to definitely consider. First off, those smart badges that people are using are basically the same tags folks are using for material tracking, forklift tracking, tool tracking. Um, so immediately you can use those in your traditional material track and trace areas. The other thing to leverage those kinds of tags on are in those um, confined space, remote monitoring, um, jobs where maybe you don't wear it all the time, but if Mike's got to go work under the tunnel, um, along with locking out the machine and doing his job safety report, he's going to wear a smart badge, so we can make sure we're keeping tabs on him, make sure he's okay, make sure he's moving. The other way to use those tags is in conjunction with an accelerated improvement workshop where, typically you do sort of your spaghetti walk, tracing people movement and part movement and document movement. And so using those smart badges in the workshop. So you, instead of people trying to draw it out, you can basically have um, the tags and the dashboards do that mapping for you, or run a small pilot where if you're setting up a new production line or looking at rearranging a production line, again, wear those tags for that sort of trial period
Yeah.
and see the data that says, okay, we're having a problem here, not enough elbow room there. Um, so kind of using it more of a lean manufacturing, uh, kind of an approach.
Yeah, that's a great point, because very often when, I've done the spaghetti walks with, uh, you know, customers, what ends up happening is we walk it the way that people think it should be walked as opposed to the way it actually happens.
Yep.
And they'll have things staged a bit better than they normally do and so forth.
Yeah.
And so we don't see the way that it normally happens in real life.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, you could put those same tags in that spaghetti walk on
Yep.
a few people, on the parts, in the documents, and get the real data where did it really move, and it's also searchable, comparable, and really adds more depth to that spaghetti walk.
Yep. We got a question from the audience here.
Okay.
So it says, if I'm interested in investing in a digitization project, what is a viable strategy to quantify how much that initiative could impact my organization? It is very difficult to estimate how much introducing real-time process monitoring, for example, could benefit an organization.
Yeah,
And
great.
I'll
That's
take
yeah.
first answer at that one, and then I'll give my thoughts as well.
Yeah, again, I think that's a good question to start with, and it's one where there's lots of use cases for some of these tools, but where's really the value? And where I usually start is, let's go to the shop or the folks that are being impacted, um, to hear their voices. So again, it may not be a labor productivity saving, but it could resolve a real production issue, quality issue, safety issue. Um, and so that's typically first. The second is kind of like we did with the utility, is really maybe it's almost a finance discussion. Where are we really spending money? Where is really money being wasted? Or do we have the ability to streamline that this initiative can help? Because if you can tap into those, like you did with utility, now you're talking language that the CEO and the finance team understands, but also things that impact the manufacturing and the other trades as well. But it's a good question to ask before jumping in,
Yep.
because you want to solve a real problem. You just don't want to make a bunch of charts and spend a bunch of time and money. You really want to solve some problems. Yep.
Yeah, and so I'll jump in here as well. As a little bit of a plug, if you go to my website at www.visualdecisions.com and look at the webinar recordings there, there's a couple of them where I outline a process for value mapping, where we really start with what are the high-level business objectives, and looking at income statements and balance sheets and that kind of thing, and the line items that are on there, and work our way backwards through how we can actually tie those individual line items to what we would look at from an industry 4.0 process, or real-time process monitoring as part of that, or really any aspect of this. And so if you're interested, please reach out to me, and we can certainly talk about how to do that within your environment.
Excellent.
So that does lead into another question that I had, though, is that for a lot of these different things, I've got a lot of experience with my team in terms of delineating what the value is. But for connected health, that's something that I don't have a lot of experience working with in terms of just doing a value proposition or a business case for that. Is that something where it's primarily based on, the soft factors of just keeping a healthy workforce, creating an environment that people trust, or is there kind of a hard dollar business case for that as well?
There's definitely both. And again, with the focus on safety and health, oftentimes that whole area has been, I don't want to say neglected, but oftentimes overlooked in leveraging digital. But in terms of the hard dollar value, I really look at it as a risk mitigation that, with the pandemic or any type of a factory shutdown, the cost of a connected health solution is less than 1 day's worth of lost production time. And so if you can use these connected health solutions, the contact tracing, distancing, density management, the remote worker monitoring, if you can mitigate losing 1 day's worth of production, you have paid for the system. Not to mention, again, the disruption with the cleaning and the recovery and the labor loss and all those other things. So there's a true quantifiable hard dollar. And you see it all the time where factories are being shut down, cleaned out, takes them a couple days. They're getting better at it, so they're faster. But it's still an issue. And then back to the table stakes, it's just like airport security after 9/11, right? Do companies want to have the risk of a shutdown, or are they going to put in place basic mitigation tools, the thermal cameras, the tracing, and those things, as just part of the business? And so then it becomes again both a risk, quantifiable hard dollar risk. It's definitely a focus on safety, which is always good and oftentimes missed. But it's one where the CEOs and operating teams that I'm talking to, they will never go through another shutdown.
Right.
And it's kind of like cybersecurity in the IT space, right? These logins, these tracking, right? It's you got to protect your assets, your people, your factories, your work environments, and these are tools that are there to help. Excellent. And companies are saying, yeah, well, we've got to have them in place. Yep.
one more question from the audience, and then I think we'll
Okay.
have to cut it off at the top of the hour.
Okay.
With respect to contact tracing features, how do you overcome the privacy concerns?
Great question. And again, the way we're doing it is we're actually not tracing the person. We're really managing the tags. Whether it's smart badges or your RFID badges, all the people data is on the HR side. And that's where it stays. And so the system just has tags 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and here's how they interacted. And then if there's a contact tracing event, then that data is given to the HR team, where they're able to ascertain which employees were wearing those tags at what day. And so that keeps any personal data, any employee data out of the contact tracing system. It allows that data to be managed to the company's information protection and policies. But also, really, again, this is no different than any type of employee safety issue in the factory or in the workplace, whether it's an injury or illness. That data is managed by the HR team. And so by going that route, we don't have to worry about that employees' data being exposed to other folks, but it gives them the ability to do that traceability if and when it's needed for the contact tracing.
Excellent. With that, I think that we are out of time. I appreciate certainly you coming, Michael, and sharing all of this with us. And I appreciate everybody in the audience giving us an hour of their hectic schedules as well. This information will be available on the website I mentioned earlier. And if you go there tomorrow, you'll be able to sign up to get a copy of the presentation. So thank you very much for attending, and look forward to continued discussions with everybody here. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, everyone.